Hello, Mayor. How are you, sir? We are, people can hear and see you right now, so just wanted to give you a heads up, okay?
Okay, well then, I will behave. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Not very good, is it? Light's not very good. Hi, Marilyn.
How are you?
Marilyn.
Good, how are you?
Good. I've been trying to get you some visual aids because I found this company that operates satellites, and they've been tracking the amount of pollution over different areas of the globe. And the guy did send me the Valley and Sacramento for March of 2019 versus 20, but I don't see that big of a difference. So I'm asking him for April because I think maybe because we didn't really shut down until pretty late in the month,
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting.
Well, I got a lot, I took your stuff, but I also reading a lot last night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to find Sacramento specific data, which was why I was hopeful about that satellite thing. But the Lung Association report obviously addresses the inequity issue in terms of impacts, but.
Yeah, hey, Christopher.
Hey. Sharply dressed as always.
Always.
Hey, Marilyn, this is Andrew. So just so you know, we have some folks in the attendee side. Some reporters are here, and it looks like we are all set up and linked up on YouTube as well. So things are live.
How do you want to do this, man?
So I'll get rid of my video. Will any of the reporters show up video-wise, or are they just asking questions and we can't see them?
They will just be asking questions and you won't be able to see them.
And who's all on?
Right now it's Lonnie, Theresa, and Veronica.
Okay, so we're waiting on some folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christopher, how do you want to do this? Do you want to kick off? You want me to?
You're muted, Christopher. You're muted. There you go.
Kick off.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, the same.
Yeah.
Not easy, man. I'll call you offline. I want to see how you're doing.
Yeah, this isn't what we signed up for.
This isn't what we signed up for.
Yet it is, but.
Do you want me to kick off, or I don't care? I mean,
Yeah.
Why don't you guys give it just a couple minutes? Yeah, just
okay.
More people definitely registered than are currently on the call. So.
Okay. I know we're not releasing the climate report, but I do think it's relevant to highlight.
No, we are. The draft report is out today for comment. Everything in it is fair game.
Okay, and the press has it too?
Yeah, it's on the local government commission website, and they all have a draft that they got.
That's fine then. Okay, then we'll.
But it is
talk
out.
About it.
It's just it's out for comment, right? They
right, for
hasn't
comment.
approved it or anything, so it's
yeah.
Okay. Right, so you'll need to talk about that whole process and everything if you could. Yeah, that'd be good. So Andrew, can you keep us apprised of the?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, we had somebody actually left. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm keeping an eye on it and I will let you know as more attendees log in. Just for edification purposes, there's also a Q&A function built into this because I have it sort of set up as a webinar rather than as a traditional Zoom meeting. And I will start actually recording this as well once we go live for the press conference, but it is live on YouTube right now. So people like in general that we sent a link to outside of the press can, are just watching you guys chat.
Okay.
All right.
Well, 9:31. Just give it one more minute because I know Ezra Romero from Public Radio is going to be in here, and he specifically wanted to. He'd been looking for something on this, so I don't want him to miss the beginning if you're
Okay.
running.
Got time.
Yeah, nothing but time.
Christopher, I assume that is a artificial backdrop.
It is. I mean, it's only a block from my house, but yeah, we have the goats out on the river today. So
We see them all the time when we're rowing.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got Ezra, Lonnie, Theresa, and Veronica are all on. And just as a quick note to members of the press, I'll be unmuting you after the initial comments so you can ask questions just like normal.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of this video and you guys can get going.
All right. Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good morning, everyone. I'm Darrell Steinberg, the mayor of Sacramento, and I'm really happy to be joined by my friend, my colleague, fellow mayor of West Sacramento, Christopher Cabaldon. This morning, the West Sacramento Climate Commission released its preliminary report and recommendations to our respective cities. For public comment, the commission itself will take up the recommendations for either modification or final approval sometime next month. But today, of course, is Earth Day. And so Mayor Cabaldon and I thought it would be important and appropriate to highlight some of the key recommendations, and of course, to talk about why this Earth Day is so significant. It's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, but maybe more significant than that, it comes in the midst of this terrible COVID-19 pandemic. And some may ask, what really is the relationship between Earth Day and COVID-19? And why would you highlight this climate change issue when we have another crisis to deal with? And the answer to the question is climate change could not be more relevant in 2020 to the COVID crisis than any other time imaginable. And Mayor Cabaldon and I want to talk about that. I think we first want to thank the climate commissioners and Stausball, the chair, and all those who have worked so hard over these months to prepare these preliminary recommendations. But I'm just going to take a couple of minutes, Mayor Cabaldon, and I'll turn it right over to you to add, and then we will take questions. And I guess there are two sides to the story in terms of the relationship between COVID-19 and climate change. In the midst of this terrible pandemic, there is a peek into what a more hopeful future might, and I emphasize might, look like. Stanford University, there are all kinds of studies now, produced a study over the last several weeks that estimates this country may experience a reduction, a 5% drop in carbon emissions in 2020. I know it's an estimate, but during the midst of the terrible financial crisis from 2008 on, the overall drop was 1.8%. Of course, we already have data from China, which shows us that in January and February of 2020, emissions dropped 40% from the same period of time in 2019. Equivalent to 192,000 fewer cars on the road in China. And of course, this is good news, but the question is it temporary good news? Or will it last when we eventually, and we will, get beyond the COVID crisis? There is another side, however, to the connection between climate and COVID that is not nearly as hopeful. Harvard School of Public Health recently published a preliminary study which estimated a 15% increased death rate associated with micro increases in communities which breathe in small particulate matter deep into the lungs. 15% higher death rate for those communities that breathe in what's called PM 2.5. We know that air pollution itself kills 7 million people per year. The Centers for Disease Control recently published a study in real time here, in fact, last Friday, that demonstrated, of course, this national disgrace that people of color are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. 30% of COVID-19 patients are African-American, 13% of the population. In New York, African-Americans are dying at twice the rate of white peers. Latinos are dying at disproportionate rates as well. This probably should not come as any surprise to any of us, because whether it's pre-existing fragile health, closer physical proximity to pollution, and jobs which put people of color on the front lines, all of this, COVID-19, climate change, systemic economic inequity, are all connected. And so what are we doing here in Sacramento and West Sacramento? We are a large region. And though we cannot control what happens throughout all of the country, certainly all of the world, we can lead. And in fact, we intend to do so. I'm going to turn over to Mayor Cabaldon for some opening remarks. And then I think I want to take a second stab, and you cover as much as you want, Christopher, in terms of the emphasis of the report and some of the key recommendations that get at the connection between climate, public health, and economic inequity. Mayor Cabaldon.
Thank you, Mayor Steinberg. And you're exactly right. I mean, the opportunities and the challenges that are emerging from the COVID crisis with respect to climate change are profound and powerful. In one area of hope is that it's a reminder of what we do when we pay attention to science and look at the evidence and the facts to tackle some of the what seem like the most impossible challenges and problems. That we are making a difference in the efforts of folks even in our own communities here in Sacramento and West Sacramento to restrain the spread of the virus, paying attention to scientific experts and to evidence, and then taking the collective actions, the solidarity that we need in order to achieve those results is being shown on the ground every single day in our two communities. And it ought to be a reminder to us that we are more capable of grappling with issues like climate change than we may have felt, that we have more agency, more power to make a difference in these big global issues, whether pandemic or climate change, right here in our own local communities. I also think we're seeing the way our daily lives can be different. We've seen studies from Switzerland and Japan about how folks who stop driving for a while, for whatever reason, the roads close or whatever policy intervention happens. And a year later, when they get their cars back, most return to their driving, but many of those drive less, and some don't drive at all. The kinds of behavioral change that can happen when you see, how much I would like to maybe drive to work fewer days less a week. There are more things that I could do remotely. I can envision myself teleworking. I don't have to be in City Hall every single moment of the day. If I'm going to work on my computer or on the phone all day long, do I have to drive to the office to do that any longer? I'm rediscovering how much I love my local trails in my community and the sidewalks as a way to get around, and that I can find everything I need to eat and to access right in my own community. I don't have to drive halfway across for 90 miles, halfway across Northern California to find the perfect furniture store. There's one in my community that I can access as well. And so I think part of what we are seeing from this experience is a reflection on our own personal lives and our personal contributions, both directly and to all the industry and transport need that is underlying our regular behaviors. And so what seemed impossible to imagine 2 months ago about how we might each individually and then policy-wise contribute to reducing our emissions footprint now seems like something that is worth reflecting on, maybe thinking about, and maybe seeing the value and the opportunities that are there as well. But as you say, Mayor, it comes at this is not a free moment to dream about all the wonderful things that are happening on climate change at this moment, because they come at a tremendous cost. The cost in terms of economic prosperity, jobs, unemployment, uncertainty, mental health, and all of the disparities that you outlined and that are present in so much of these systems around the health and the economy that are being disproportionately faced by so many residents of color, folks who are already experiencing homelessness or economic pressure. They are bearing the brunt of this crisis in particular. And so this isn't a moment to say, well, climate change is resolving itself. Maybe the air in China is breathable right now. The waters in Venice are clear, and if now it's all solved. It isn't. We've gotten some insights here. Our science will get better as a result of the experiment that's occurring with fewer particulates going into the air right now. So there are a lot of moments of opportunity, windows of opportunity here for us in our own region on the ground, just our two cities together collaborating with bold action, just as we have on the public health crisis. And so in some sense, the forthcoming recommendations of the Commission on Climate Change couldn't be better timed. I know the Commission very much is looking forward to robust public input and participation as they take their recommendations to the final stages, because just like everything else, they see how many opportunities and challenges have emerged during this crisis, and they know that there are many residents in our communities, many small businesses, nonprofits, and others who have new ideas and new perspectives from this COVID crisis that can help to even strengthen even further the recommendations that are pending with the Commission. So thanks for having me, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's get into a little bit of the detail and maybe talk about an elephant, if you will, in the room when we address this subject. There are some who will say the economic damage as a result of COVID is so profound that we can't afford to deal with our environmental goals because we must rebuild the economy. That, of course, is a false choice, because what our drive is between our cities and among our cities is to build a modern, inclusive economy that is clean and green. And because that's where the greatest opportunity for economic growth, frankly, lies. And I think that's important to say, because there are some who may look at this report and say, well, geez, how are you going to afford that? And I think we would both say, how are we going to afford to continue to continue to have dirty air, to continue to have neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected by not addressing these issues? And how do we not take advantage of the opportunity to build a modern economy that is based upon our very ambitious, but appropriately ambitious climate goals?
Yeah,
what do you say to that, sir?
That is so true. I mean, it is the case that both of our cities, like most local governments, are severely challenged in the crisis, and the Congress is allocating huge amounts of funding for relief efforts, and those are funds that we're borrowing against future generations to support that. The fiscal pressures are real, and we can't deny those. But in no way could we ever imagine resolving the challenges of climate change just by one or two government programs. I mean, we weren't going to spend City of Sacramento and West Sacramento money in a way that was going to fix this. As you said, we have to rebuild the economy differently, and we knew that before. We need a new economy to save the planet and to save our communities, and to prevent future pandemics and future mass disruptions of the economy and of migration patterns and everything else. We need a new economy anyway, and in some sense, this moment is a focusing moment for us to say, okay, now for real. And so many small businesses and big businesses, so many nonprofits, so many workers, so many folks thinking about retraining because of this crisis. are ready to meet the moment of climate change in a way that they and we weren't 6 weeks ago. And so it's never been about a government funding program in order to get this done. This is really about redesigning from the bottom up, all the way through the systems, our economy, our politics, our governments, and our own behaviors in order to achieve the climate reductions that we need.
So let's now highlight just a couple areas, and then maybe we'll turn it over for questions. The recommendations are broad-based, and I suppose I would characterize them in several ways. One is, how will we choose to invest our infrastructure dollars as cities going forward over the next decade? And secondly, how will we attempt and succeed to build upon the changed lifestyles and behaviors, especially of the millennial generation, to move to a whole new way of people getting around? We call it advanced mobility or clean mobility. And on the investment side, our Climate Commission calls for the electrification of all new construction in our cities by 2023, and a transition to electric for all existing buildings by 2030. Of course, on the clean mobility side, you've been a great leader here, Mayor Cabaldon. You were the one who really rallied, I think, and led the region around the issue of the electric jump bikes, and of course that now has become part of our common community culture. Now it's not just bikes; it's scooters, and who knows what is next. But we have significant opportunities here to grow the clean mobility sector in our cities. Active transportation, expanding public transit, and of course moving to zero emission vehicles. The report contains appropriately aggressive timelines to meet all those. And of course, you mentioned it earlier. Can we continue the telecommuting trend that we have been required to make as part of our workplaces here in Sacramento and West Sacramento over the past 6 weeks? I think we're finding, even if it's imperfect, that we don't have to be at a particular office every day. In fact, I would say some days it might be a relief to be away from City Hall.
For them and for us.
Yeah, exactly, for them and for us. And then there's the other issue I want to highlight, which is economic equity and economic investment. I talk a lot about our Measure U in Sacramento. I know you have similar efforts. We're sort of transitioning now from U to the federal stimulus package, which our city, by virtue of its size, is going to get a significant investment to sort of replace the lost Measure U dollars. We must invest those resources in signature initiatives like the California Mobility Center, that has the opportunity to create jobs, and then create the workforce training, which you and I both share a passion for, to make sure that our kids from our neighborhoods are first in line, educated and trained for these new jobs that we're creating. And so why don't you add to my soliloquy here?
Well, you covered the major themes of the draft recommendations that are coming forward, and just to emphasize again, the commission is working on it. These aren't yet our recommendations. We are looking forward to the public input to the commission, and then the commission has just devoted so many hours of expertise and thought and around these questions. So those folks are going to be preparing the recommendations to both of us and to our cities. But they are bold, and this is a moment to reflect on those, to see, are they bold enough? Are there other things that we could be doing? And our experience in the last few weeks is definitely a great example of that. This workforce training component, I think, is absolutely critical. Because this is a moment where where workforce training systems are reinventing themselves, where there are much more resources that are coming for workforce training. We can either repeat what we did for the last generation and just try to get somebody back in the same job that they had before, maybe, and often fail, or we can really retool and redesign our workforce training to build that new economy, that economy organized around green jobs, around clean mobility. And this is a big opportunity to accomplish that. Telework is a great example of how that works, is that telework and telecommuting was a challenge to accomplish. It's not like technically hard, but it was always.
It is for some of us.
Yes, okay. as an economy, as a society, we have the tools to be able to do it, or we did, but we weren't doing it because it was the sort of thing. It's like, well, if 99% of us are still coming to the office, then it was a challenge for the one person. Well, does everybody go on Zoom or some other platform? How do you develop the technology? The opportunities in moments like this to focus us on, okay, if we had to in 1 week build the telecommuting infrastructure on technology and bandwidth and what have you in our organizations to support telework, could we do it? Well, the answer is yeah, we mostly did. And that sort of lens on what seemed like really big, gigantic, bold recommendations, and they are from the commission in some of these domains, it should be a reminder that we can. That we're as a community, as a society here in the Sacramento, in our 2 cities in the region, we can really accomplish that. And the other example I think that we have from some of these recommendations is we've already retooled our regional infrastructure investments. Your work on the Sacramento Emergency Clean Air and Transportation Program back when you were in the Assembly was the groundbreaking efforts that led to SB 375 and other efforts that you led legislatively and that we implemented here in the region, that showed that even a region like ours, as a regular salt of the earth place like the Sacramento region, could make dramatic changes in land use policies and transportation policies and in infrastructure investments to accomplish that. And so these recommendations are windows on the kinds of things that we might do next in order to achieve the really audacious goal of carbon zero.
That's great. And remember, the region beyond Sacramento and West Sacramento have committed to a 19% reduction in GHG emissions as part of our regional land use and transportation plan. It's aggressive and appropriately so. So this goes beyond just our 2 cities. The region has committed to that important objective as well.
Okay, guys, we have a couple questions in the queue. You want to go to Q&A?
Sure.
All right. Andrew's going to open.
All right. First up is Theresa.
Hello, mayors. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, Theresa.
Hello. So I was reading through the report and there's quite a few really ambitious goals. When will it be time to take stock of some of the goals highlighted in the report? Sort of when is the first opportunity to look at how the cities did with those goals? And then if there are any that aren't met by the timelines, is there going to be consequences, or sort of what do you envision as the process?
Go ahead, Christopher.
So the draft recommendations report articulates sort of recommendation by recommendation which recommendations are feasible in the short term, which ones are more challenging for fiscal or structural or legal reasons and will take a little bit longer, and so on. It doesn't articulate a by August of 2022 this one will have happened and that sort of thing. So the report is a inventory of actions that can be taken, and they're very specific actions. Once the 2 cities consider them and the cities adopt either in total or in pieces the elements of the recommendations, then we'll be able to see, okay, what have we actually committed to at the city level? And then now that the work has moved from the commission to our operating agencies, to the planning department, to the public works department, to our regional partners at places like SACOG, to our collaborators in the environmental justice and social justice communities, then we'll be able to put pen to paper and say, okay, now that we have an execution plan, here's the date certain by which we intend to achieve this. Here's how we're going to pay for it, and here's how we're going to be held accountable for it.
There are some specific benchmarks, and of course, what we will do once the commission adopts its plan, we will take whatever changes are necessary to our ordinances regarding construction, and we will embed the recommendations into city law in whatever way is necessary and appropriate. Around equity, though, we do have, the commission does call for some specific goals to expand electric car share in low-income neighborhoods in year one, to really develop a green entry-level jobs program. Again, we have a tremendous opportunity with the federal stimulus dollars. Obviously, Sacramento is the city of trees, to continue to be ambitious in terms of planting trees. And then the cities are each required to adopt a climate action plan, which is a binding document. And we will take the recommendations of the commission, we'll embed them into our climate action plan, into our general plan as necessary, into our specific plans, and into our local ordinances.
All right, next up is Ezra from Capital Public Radio.
Hey, mayors, Ezra here with Cap Radio. I have a couple questions, but I think I can condense them into one. This is sort of a comprehensive plan you're talking about that's going to have major changes for sectors across the economy here. Will this have teeth for those? And then secondly, can you give me some examples of how this plan will be equitable? Climate change is disproportionately affecting low income or disadvantaged communities. And how will you make this equitable for, say, someone in a place like South Sacramento or another part of the region?
I'm going to take a shot at this one first. So, first of all, this is a challenge, and it is an audacious plan. But if COVID-19 has not intensified our focus and commitment to addressing issues of public health, I don't know what else could. The fact that millions of people die in the world of air pollution itself, the fact that it is very clear that our communities, all our communities, but especially our communities of color, are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. What we're going through now only intensifies our commitment to be bold in our actions here. And yes, there will undoubtedly be some resistance, but if we can integrate economic development, economic growth, and job creation with new clean industries around clean mobility, around electrification, then we will create more consensus than not. And what was the second part of your question again? I'm sorry, what's the second part?
How do you plan to make this equitable, with climate change? So many communities are disproportionately.
Well, first of all, it's not going to be top down. We must ensure that our communities of color are not just represented at the seats of power, and there's a whole section on equity in the report, but that we have an ongoing formal way for the communities to input into everything we do. And I don't even believe that we as mayors should necessarily appoint who should be members of an equity commission. I think the community already has a lot of ways and means to come together and essentially appoint and anoint themselves. And it'll be our job to listen to them especially, and to everyone as this plan is implemented. Christopher?
Yeah, I would add two things. I think Mayor Steinberg, you said this isn't a top-down plan. It is a comprehensive plan in the sense that it covers a wide range of interconnected elements, because that's the nature of this problem, whether it's transportation mobility, buildings, food systems, health systems, it's all of those things. But it is not a comprehensive plan in the sense that once this is adopted, this is the entire strategy for how we're going to defeat climate change. That is, that's not within our pay grade as cities or as mayors. And the commission is not pretending that all of their recommendations together are going to not just get us to carbon zero, but then reverse the dangerous trends that we've been experiencing in the climate arena. So we're not, we're not the intelligent designers or God in this space that is going to accomplish every single thing through this plan. This is a set of, okay, what do we have to do in this crisis, the climate crisis, just as we've done to take bold, but sometimes experimental and iterative actions in the COVID space has been a good example of that. Like we act, look at the science and the evidence, and then act again. Do the same thing tomorrow, the same thing the day after that. Climate is going to be the same kind of fight. It's not like the commission does not have all the answers, and neither do we. And so it is, we will be testing, and that's part of the reason why one of the commission's recommendations is a very robust dashboard that's a public dashboard about not just our progress on the emissions benchmarks, but also on racial and socioeconomic equity and metrics that report that progress and allow not just us to hold ourselves accountable, but the community to hold the community and us accountable as one. And so I think we have to set the right level of ambition about what it is that we're accomplishing here, and also understand that once this is done, that doesn't let all of us off the hook as small business owners or as activists or as residents or as employees. We all still have to keep looking for every opportunity to keep at this fight. The other thing I would say about the regional question, which I know you've raised also, Ezra, which is, will this have teeth in the region? And this is a commission that's been convened by the both of us as mayors of our own cities, and its recommendations will need to be considered and acted upon through our city processes as well. And it doesn't have, we don't have the authority through this commission to bind actions of the rest of the region. That said, our two cities are leaders in this region, and many other cities and communities in the Sacramento region, in the 6 counties and 22 cities are looking to the work that's emerging here, to the expertise and to some of the resources and ideas that really only our two cities can bring to the battle. And they're looking for advice. They see the same challenges. They see that they have their 19% target that Mayor Steinberg mentioned for the region as a whole. And so there's a hunger for actionable strategies throughout the region. I'm confident that the recommendations as they emerge will be broadly adopted and embraced throughout the Sacramento region.
I don't want to underestimate the importance of this 19% regional goal. It is significant, and it is based upon the work that I did in the legislature, SB 375 and SB 743, where regions throughout the state are required to set greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Despite the political differences within the region, it's not all blue, it's red and purple too. The region unanimously agreed to a 19% target, which was an increase over the prior target, actually a significant increase. And so we are all bound together here. The issues of air pollution and climate know no artificial boundaries. And that's reflected in our region's commitment here. So to the degree that this report helps our cities, but also provides some guideposts to the other cities and counties of the region, feel free, please, to borrow and take any idea embedded in the commission's report and make it your own.
All right, next up I have Lonnie. Go ahead. You're unmuted, Lonnie, or at least.
Yeah, can you
there
hear
you
me?
go. Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you, Lonnie.
Hey, good morning, mayors. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but you talked about basically policy. But how much are you hoping that individuals will change their own personal behavior after going through what we've gone through? Because we've been told that people are noticing that the air is cleaner. They're kind of have to ride their bicycles, and that are you hoping that will be more convincing than reading policy papers and being preached at as to how they should modify their behavior when they've actually done it and see a positive effect?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
You go.
I mean, I think it's all of the above, right? So one of the silver linings of this crisis is it is giving us a forced moment to think about the way that we live our lives and ways that we might live better in a way that also produce a reduced impact on the climate. And I know we're, I'm seeing this in my own individual daily life, but in hearing about the journeys of everybody else in my community, it's not, nobody wants to continue in this shelter order forever. That's not the point. But there are aspects of it that you think, do I need to go into the office every day? Can I walk to get a cup of coffee as opposed to driving to the coffee house? Could I go volunteer locally in my community in a different way? How does the food system work? And could we actually house folks in motels that are experiencing homelessness? There's just so many things that it's opening our eyes to. We could, and I want to, and we want to, and that is so essential for dealing with the crisis. That said, it is essential that we in government, that we as communities, as businesses and nonprofits and others, the civic sector in our region, enable that behavior. It isn't just that, okay, I really like walking or using the trail on my bike or on foot instead of in a car. There has to be a trail. It has to be safe and it has to be maintained. There has to be the option at workplaces to telework and to telecommute. That isn't looked down upon or prevents me from getting a promotion when I'm up for it next time. The systems have to change to take advantage of this moment where we're thinking about ways we might live better with less of a climate impact. So it's definitely happening. We're seeing that at every level of our lives, and it's why it's an important moment to strike on the policy side, on the infrastructure side, and on the investment side to make sure that the changes that people are starting to consider in their own daily journeys can be made into widespread behavior that will help us to fight the climate crisis.
I would just add that policy is very, very important, as Mayor Cabaldon just said, but not nearly as important as people choosing a different way. And it's the combination of the two that is so powerful. I remember a long time ago, way back in 2006, not that long ago, when we were debating SB 375 in the legislature. And a lot of people said, there is no way people will want to live downtown. There is no way that people will get rid of their car. There's no way that people want to walk to work, and biking is for the trail, and all of that. I mean, that was kind of the mindset. And what's really happened is, the change in the law was meaningful, but it was really how people voted essentially with their feet by choosing a lifestyle that is more climate friendly. And of course, we still have people who commute long and the significant inequities that exist in terms of the lack of jobs and housing balance in many of our neighborhoods. But this generation and future generations are choosing and will continue to choose to live in healthier ways that don't require them to be in long commutes for 90 minutes or 2 hours every single day, that want to take advantage of our natural beauty and our natural resources. And so it's the combination of policy and the fact that people are becoming enlightened, and certainly COVID-19 puts the most pronounced exclamation point on why public health is so important, that it's not just some side issue while we all go about our daily lives. it is integral to our daily lives as we are experiencing right now in real time. It's true of COVID-19 and it is true of climate. And I'm proud to be working with Mayor Cabaldon and all my colleagues and these commissioners who have put forward a set of bold recommendations. Let's get to it.
One last question on that note of this link between climate change and COVID. You know, they're both here. What are the next steps for adopting this plan? Like, how long until this becomes a reality?
So the report's been the draft report's been released. It's out available on the web and will be promoted by the commissioners through the you can either find it directly on the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change Google search, or the Local Government Commission, which has been the host of the commission. That's lgc.org. So it's widely available to the public today. Then the commission is holding its virtual meeting on May 13th. In order to take up these recommendations. Also, it'll be its first meeting since the COVID-19 crisis and emergency and some of the orders and some of the issues that we've talked about today. So they'll be taking up that question. And so with an intention then to shortly thereafter transmit their recommendations to both of us and to the cities. If they need a little bit more time because of what we're learning and some of what we've talked about this morning about behavioral change and opportunities are opening in the green economy and those issues, then they'll need to take it. All right, this is that moment, that window of opportunity that we don't want to miss and just return to what we were planning to do back in February on the commission's recommendations. But they're working deliberately because this is a key crisis and a key moment. So May 13th is their commission meeting, and there'll continue to be opportunities for public engagement and comment after that. But this is really the key window. And so if we really want to encourage folks in the public and nonprofit organizations and others in the civic sector to engage now, check out those recommendations that are on the web, and then to give feedback in this formative stage to the Climate Commission before the virtual meeting on May 13th.
Well said. Thank you, Mayor Cabaldon. It's great to work with you, Mary Lynn. Are there any other?
Yeah, that's it for questions. So thank you everybody for coming today, and yeah.
Happy Earth Day. Be safe.
Great Earth Day. Thanks so much.
Happy Earth Day. Bye.
Thank you.